Yo, welcome back to the channel, boys and girls. In today's video, I wanted to give you guys an update on my 2022 Specialized LA Sprint because I realized it's been about 6 months since my last update on this frame set, and this past weekend I did a 100-mile century ride on this frame set. So I figured now would be a good time to give you guys an update to kind of let you guys know how I feel about this frame, give you a rundown of some of the components and some of the updates that I made on this frame, let you guys kind of know whether or not I think this bike is comfortable or not, and just basically just let you know if I still love this frame a lot. So without further ado, let's get cracking. Sheesh, man, that is looking sick, man. Everything on my bike is looking so good right now. All right, so as we continue on, let's talk about some of the components that I have on this bike as of right now. This is the beginning of June in 2023. So I have made a couple of changes to this bike based on the last time that you've seen it late last winter. So first and foremost, I actually ended up switching back to the Elite Drive. These are the 45D model. If you look on Elite's website right now, they do not carry the 45s anymore. They have since been discontinued. So you either can get the 50 millimeter version of these, the depth, or the 65. I believe they might have like a 30 or 35, I don't know, but double check the website. But the reason why I went back to the 45 depth wheels versus the 65 is because I wanted to see for myself whether or not I could feel any of the sort of tangible differences with a shallower depth wheel versus a 65. And so far I've used these on long solo rides, I've used these on group rides, and like I said in the intro of this video, I just a few days ago used this setup that you see here for a 100-mile group ride, and honestly it's extremely comfortable. Can I tell whether or not it's harder to sustain a certain speed, say maybe above 25 miles an hour, 40 kilometers an hour, whatever? I don't really know, but I can definitely say that when it comes to acceleration with these wheels, obviously because they are lighter, these wheels are like, I think 1,288 grams for the pair. They are obviously easier to accelerate when you put the power down versus a more deeper depth wheel. Another thing too is because these are more shallow and you have longer carbon spokes versus a deeper depth wheel, that also means that the ride is ever so slightly more comfortable. And that brings me, actually no, before I talk about comfort, the other thing that I changed on this frame is I installed a spider-based power meter courtesy of SRAM or Quark, whatever it is. Last time you saw this, I think I still was running the PowerTap P2 pedals, but I have since switched to the Look Keo carbon blade pedals, which I really like, with ceramic bearings of course on that. And overall it saves about, I don't know, 100 grams versus the PowerTap P2 pedals, even though weight is not the most important thing. But yeah, those are the two main changes I made on here. Of course, we have my 3D printed, what is this, top cap integration for the S-Works 7 handlebar, 130, negative 12 degrees, super duper comfortable. We got, of course, the Prime carbon aero handlebars in a size 40 centimeters. SRAM E-tap, we got all the good stuff. Power, or Specialized power saddle. This saddle is really comfortable. Unfortunately, I think it is a little bit too wide for my sit bones. I think this is the 155 millimeter version. I think this is the most narrow version that they make. So I might switch out to a Specialized or S-Works Roman Evo saddle and try to get that at 142 millimeters. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys like the short nose saddle, or do you guys prefer a traditional length saddle? Because those are a lot easier to find in a more narrow width. Of course, we got my machine radar light. No issues with that. I really like that. It works well even in group ride settings. It does drain your battery on my Wahoo Bolt, obviously a lot quicker because you have all these things paired to the computer. But I would say even after 100 miles with the radar light, I probably had still about maybe 55% battery life. So I would say with the radar light compared to the Wahoo Bolt, you should get at least 200 miles of battery with the computer on a single charge. Alrighty, so next up, I do want to talk about comfort because that is extremely important. And like I said, part of the reason why I made this video or wanted to make this video was because I was just inspired on how comfortable this bike was after a 100-mile ride, especially on the roads and tarmac that Chicago has, which, as you guys know by now, the roads are pretty bad around here. And the bike is really comfortable, and I think there's a lot of things going on at once to allow this bike to be more comfortable than you would expect for it being a aluminum frame. So first and foremost, of course, you have the carbon fork, which is going to help dampen all the vibrations. You have a carbon seat post as well. That's also going to help with comfort. The other thing too is because of my saddle height, to drop the handlebars, because it's so extreme versus, you know, to the average cyclist, I think because I have more seat posts exposed, that also is going to add a little bit more compliance. Again, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know if this is actually true, but I get the feeling that because there is more seat posts exposed, that allows the bike to be more comfortable. Another thing too that is allowing this bike to be very comfortable despite being an aluminum frame set is I'm rocking 28C Continental GP5 tires, which versus the 25, of course, they're going to be a little bit more comfortable because you're able to run a lower tire pressure. So with the setup you see here, based on my weight and everything, I usually run about 77 psi in the rear, 78, and then I run about 74, 75 psi in the front. And of course, I'm rocking latex tubes, and so far they have been a lot more reliable when it comes to puncture resistance versus the standard butyl inner tubes that you can buy, which they're a little bit cheaper, but again, I'm having to replace the inner tubes a lot less because the latex tube just works a lot better, I should say, excuse me, and it just overall, that just adds to the overall comfort of this bike. So like I said, guys, this bike is really, really comfortable. Next up, I want to talk about my crank arms, because these are actually a 170 millimeter length crank arms versus my usual 172.5 millimeter length crank arms. Now this is the only bike that I'm running slightly shorter crank arms. Now there are some quirks to it, but I finally have this bike dialed in enough to where it's a non-issue. So tangibly speaking, can you feel the difference running a shorter length crank arms? Probably not. I think the only place that you might notice it is when it comes to your preferred cadence. So if your preferred cadence is anywhere, say is around like 85 or so, you probably will end up having to run maybe like 89, 90 RPM to kind of get the same sort of perceived feeling to do whatever sort of set power output that you want to do. So no issues there. And the cool thing about running slightly shorter crank arms is you run less risk of having pedal strike on the ground if you're really leaning into the corners, and I think it does ever so slightly allow you to run a slightly higher seat post as well. So I've been kind of experiencing with that, and yeah, so far it's worked really, really well. Now, the other thing I want to talk about on the same topic, now, even though yes, you can run a taller or higher seat post, I think mine, for this particular setup, I've been running it a little bit shorter than normal. I've been kind of experimenting with that. I know like some of the pros like Tade Pagacha, he's been running his saddle height a little bit lower, and it definitely does protect your knees a lot more. You know, you feel like you're really tucked into the overall riding experience. SRAM Force Axis E-Tab. Now, the last video I did on my LA Sprint, I did have a couple of criticisms for using specifically SRAM Force E-Tab. Now, I'm happy to say that I have finally worked out all the kinks with this frame set as far as shifting, brake rub, all that. And it's interesting because with the SRAM Rival Group set that I mentioned to you guys in my previous video on my VeloBuild CX002 frame set, that frame set as a whole just worked flawlessly right out of the box. I didn't have to troubleshoot anything, but for some reason with the SRAM Force, there was some quirks to work out. So yeah, right now I've been able to get everything dialed in absolutely perfect. So the shift quality is snappy, right away. I don't have any brake rubs. The factory disc pads, they're really grippy. I don't have any problems in descents, anything like that slowing me down. It works really well, and probably to the point that honestly the weight savings and being able to integrate the power meter is enough for me to most likely purchase another SRAM Force group set for one of my future road builds. I do want to try Shimano Di2 12-speed. So any of you guys out there having experience with the new Shimano 12-speed, specifically the Ultegra version, please let me know in the comments, because yeah, that price for that is a little bit more expensive than this, but not by much. But I want to kind of see if you know, there really is any difference between the two. Probably not for how I ride, but I am interested to know. So let's continue. And as you guys know, no video of mine is complete without me making some sort of eggplant joke. However, before we continue this video, I do want to give a quick shout out to the amazing cycling apparel brand called Red White Apparel. Big shout out to them for sending me out these bibs. I've already done a full review on these bibs, but they are some of the most comfortable bibs that I own. In fact, these are probably the most comfortable bibs that I own. If I was going to do a hyper long endurance distance ride, say like 200 or 300 miles, these would definitely be the ones that I would pick. What's really cool, all right, there we go. What's really cool about these bibs, there's really two main components that I really like about them. Number one is they fit extremely well. Yes, they are snug, but your bib should be snug, and that means that even when you're sweating or you're putting down the power, whether you're indoors or you're out on the road, they're not going to move, which means there's no chafing. The second thing that I really like about these bibs is the chamois. Now, chamois quality, now that can be subjective, but what's really cool about these bibs is sorry, I'm gonna show you my junk again. But what's really cool about these bibs is both the shape of the chamois and the placement of where they put the chamois. So they've paid a lot of attention to the placement of it. So what happens is there's a lot more cushion towards the front of the bibs, which means that there isn't any potential to have chafing on the seam lines, because that can be an issue. But overall, for $140, these are probably some of the best bibs that you can buy if comfort and fit is really, really important to you. I will give you the caveat and say that not even the best bibs on the market is going to replace a ill-fitting bike fit or a saddle that does not work for you. So as long as everything is dialed in, you should be comfortable regardless of the bibs that you use. But with the Red White Apparel bibs, they just work so well. So let's continue. Alrighty, so there are two drawbacks to this frame set, and I think in a lot of ways these two drawbacks can possibly be a positive thing. So the first thing is the weight. Now obviously this frame is heavy because it is an aluminum frame. I would reckon it's probably going to be at least 300 grams heavier than a comparable carbon frame. So if you are a weight weenie, this is not the frame for you. The second drawback to this frame that I can think of is the price. At $1,800 USD plus tax and shipping, all that other stuff, it's pretty expensive for an aluminum frame. You know, with the price point, what you get with that is you also get the support and service if you can find one of these frame sets locally, whether it's from a flagship specialized shop or an authorized dealer. So if you want to be able to speak to someone in person, be able to have this bike serviced locally versus trying to have to send the bike back for a warranty back to China, then to me, the little bit of extra money that you're going to end up having to pay for this frame, to me, is worth it. Now, some of the positives that I like about this bike is because yes, it's aluminum, it's heavy, that means that the power delivery is instant. There's no flex with this frame at all, which if you are a crit racer or you're someone who does a lot of fast group rides, you are going to really enjoy the stiffness of this frame. Another positive, for me at least, is the geometry. So the reach on this for a size 56 frame is like 398, which this is actually the longest reach of all the road bikes I have, and I really like that. And just overall, just the feeling, yet the comfort, stiffness, all of it as a complete package, this bike is fantastic. And pair that with these Elite Drive 45D wheels, you have a very, very capable bike that you're going to enjoy on fast group rides, for crit racing, for just solo adventures, and it can fit up to 32C tires. So if you want to do some sort of rough road riding, you'll be able to do that too. And because the bike is engineered, as far as I know, to be more comfortable versus the previous LA Sprint, you're going to be able to use this bike for such a variety of riding styles. So I think I rambled enough with today's video, guys. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to leave them down below. And I will check you guys on the next one. Thank you so much for watching. Peace.